Good morning, and I'd like to welcome everyone watching online this morning, and I'd like to call to order this Planning and Development Committee for February 15th. The first order of business is a declaration of pecuniary interest, and I'll remind every member of your responsibility. None declared. Then this morning we have two delegations, and the first is Jim Hendry. He's here about the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, and I believe Kevin is going to introduce it. Is that right? Oh. Welcome both.
Is there a presentation? Can you put the presentation up?
Yeah, sorry, is Jim's presentation ready to go?
Great, that's it. And next, and I advance the slides by this?
Yeah, I think it's just probably that forward.
Perfect, okay. Well, now that we got that out of the way, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here this morning. It's a lovely facility. So I'm Jim Hendry, and I'm a registered professional forester, and I'm with the organization called the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, more commonly known as the Model Forest. And what I would like to do in this short period of time is introduce you to the Model Forest and introduce you to one of our main programs within the Model Forest, and that's the Forest Certification Program. So a bit about our history, or who is the Model Forest. So it started in 1992, and it was part of the Canadian Forestry Service initiative, federal initiative, to establish 10 model forests across all of Canada, and Eastern Ontario was fortunate enough to be one of those model forests. The prime objective of the organization is to promote sustainable forest management, and we do this in a number of ways. Our tagline, which is borrowed from the Mohawks of Akwesasne in our area, is a forest for 7 generations, and that speaks to the long-term nature of what we do and the sustainable nature of what we do. Our focus is sustainable forest management, and specifically on private land and community forests only, not Crown land. Up until 2010, we were partially funded by the federal government through the Canadian Forestry Service, and we are no longer funded through them. That ended in 2010. So a bit about what we do now and our future. So this is our 26th year in existence. We are a strictly not-for-profit, self-funded organization through members, through sponsorships, applications to funding, and so on. We have a volunteer board of directors. There are 12 members, and it's represented by private landowners, some industry reps, First Nations reps, local government makes up the board. And we are membership driven. We do have a membership of the Model Forest. And our prime function really is to facilitate, to coordinate, and to lead all around forest certification or sustainable forest management. We have 3 core businesses. One is education and outreach, and that is expressed by the workshops and the conferences we put on, our newsletters, and a number of other education opportunities that we provide to, and specifically to, community forests. The second core business is Forest Health Network. And this is in this ever-increasing threats that we see our forests under, whether it's invasive species or climate change or a number of other things. We work to advance science around that and communicate that to our partners. And then third, but not least, is forest certification. So I'll provide you with a bit of an outline of forest certification. So the forest certification for the Model Forest. First of all, what is forest certification? Simply, it's a voluntary system that demonstrates to the consumer, to the public, that sustainable forest management is being undertaken on a said piece of land. And how do we ensure that? There is a third-party audit system. So we abide by standards. A third party comes in, audits it, and then proves whether we are managing sustainably based on standards. So that's what certification is. And there are a number of certification bodies out there. One is called the Forest Stewardship Council. more commonly known by its acronym FSC. If you ever flip over your bill from different banks or whatever, you'll see FSC certified. So that just proves that that piece of paper was harvested from a sustainably managed forest. It's an international organization. It's a not-for-profit organization. It's global. Its biggest, we'll say, use of FSC is Canada. Canada, it leads the way in FSC globally, and it's all about supporting environmentally appropriate, socially beneficial, and economically viable sustainable forest management. Now, boiling this down to the model forest and our involvement in the certification program, we achieved FSC certification, group certification, in 2002. Worked for a number of years to achieve that. And it's very important that it's group certification. So what that enables the model forest to do is to bring in small private landowners under a group certificate that, plain and simply, it makes it affordable. If one forest was to do it on its own, it would be cost prohibitive. I'll give you a bit of a picture of the scale. The next 3 slides kind of show the extent of our certification program. So under our group certificate, we have approximately 82,000 hectares, and it's represented by many different landowners. 109 private landowners. Actually, tomorrow I'll be going to a local gentleman, Mr. Fisher. I'm not sure if you know him, Jim Fisher, and he just recently signed up. So we have 110 private landowners. There's 14 community forests. I'm very happy to say that the last community forest, the most recent community forest to sign on to certification is Bruce County. And we have 3 independent forest managers. One company you may know locally, that's Lands and Forests. They are certified under us, and they bring in their clients. We have 2 commercial forest owners, and 5 maple syrup producers produce FSC certified maple syrup as well. Certainly, the next 2 slides are slides that you're not expected to read the details, but what it shows is that the model forest is a group. It's represented by different organizations. One of those in the center, those 14 blocks, one of them will say Bruce County certified. It's X amount of acres in size, and that Kevin Predden is your manager. So the Model Forest Certification Program goes from Eastern Ontario, the Quebec-Ontario border, right through to Long Point Region Conservation Authority, and then up into Bruce County. Grey County has a certified forest. Saugeen Valley, CA, Grey Sauble, CA is certified. So it's definitely more than the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, and that's why, hence the name, the Model Forest. We are working with a number of other community forests, Ganaraska Conservation Authority, City of Mississauga, Trident Valley CA, and they have shown interest as well. Interestingly, I find it quite interesting, the town of Oakville was one of the first to become FSC certified under our group certificate back in 2006. So that's a very quick snapshot of who the Model Forest is and a bit about our certification program. And I'd like to thank you, the civic leaders, and specifically Kevin, for wanting to go down this road with the Model Forest. We worked on it for about, I think, a year and a bit on certification. And kudos to Kevin for doing an excellent job on meeting the standards. We recently had a 5-year audit in November the 27th to December the 1st, 5 days of being with an auditor. It's a lovely time. And Kevin did extremely well. And so congratulations. I look forward to working with Kevin, your staff, and your board in advancing this forward. So thank you very much. Before I step down and the second presenter comes forward, I'd like to introduce the second presenter. Jamie McKinnon is with Blue Source, and Jamie will do an excellent job of explaining all this about what carbon offset opportunity is. But I will say that the model forest has been working with Blue Source and Jamie for the past year on this financial opportunity, and with commitments, of course, on looking at carbon offsets and how the model forest can work with Blue Source to provide extra value to our community forests through that particular market. And we're very happy to partner with Blue Source. And with that, I'll let Jamie come forward. I'll be more than happy to address any questions before I step aside. Yes, ma'am.
I used to be involved with a watershed group, and I wish I'd had some of this knowledge back then. But I was just interested in your private woodlots in this area, in an agricultural area. It would be beneficial. I mean, you want to keep the woodlots that are there, because sometimes you drive by and the woodlot's gone. It's been turned over for cash cropping. So your 109 private woodlots, did they have to be a certain size before they could be put together and certified? Like, was there criteria they had to be like 10 acres or 15 acres, or could you just get, in cash crop country, you're lucky to get 2 or 3 acres sometimes, or 4 or 5. Was there?
Yeah, I can answer that. So there is no size limit. Obviously, if the direct answer is there's no size limit. Size does matter when it comes to forests in terms of functionality, but yes, we'd be interested in certifying small woodlots. I think the smallest one we have is 10 acres, and I know Jim's is, yeah, it would be both 2 or 3 times that, Jim Fisher. So I think that answers your question. Is that correct?
I was just interested in how small you would consider going. And so I know Eastern Ontario is different, but I think when you come into certain areas, we really need those little woodlots preserved. And
Absolutely. And so I'm from the Cornwall area, and I'm very familiar with the rate of conversion from forest to cash crop. So that's not foreign to me, and I see the value in it. Absolutely.
So is that happening in Eastern Ontario? Sorry, I was just curious.
Most definitely.
Yes.
If you want to know sort of the extent of that, if you want to know the extent of that, go on to the South Nation Conservation Authority site, and they have a forest cover report that was recently presented. I worked for them, and that will give you the extent of of conversion in that neck of the woods.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Sorry, just before you leave, can you mention that report again, Jim, and where it was?
Yeah, so the acronym is SNC, and the website is for the South Nation Conservation.
South Nation?
South Nation Conservation.
Okay,
Forest Cover Report 2016.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any further questions just before you get away? Maybe there's a couple we can get, no? Thanks very much for the presentation, and thanks. So then I guess our next delegation is Jamie McKinnon. He's Vice President of Environmental Solutions with Blue Source Canada, and welcome.
Thank you very much.
Jamie.
Thank you, and thank you to the committee for this opportunity to speak. Our objective here is to really help Bruce County evaluate the opportunity of forest carbon. And in light of that, my objective today would be to help the committee understand some of the fundamentals behind that evaluation. So I'm going to really skip over, in the interest of time, the slides of who Blue Source is. Suffice to say, we've been developing environmental attributes, so carbon offsets, attributes related to renewable energy for 21 years in Canada and the US, and one of the very few companies with a specialization in forest carbon, and the only company with those credentials that is here in Ontario. So we're partnering with Eastern Ontario Model Forest to help community forests evaluate this opportunity, and those community forests that are interested in pursuing the opportunity to help them develop the actual offset and generate value from their sustainable forest management operations. So I'm going to talk a little bit today about why that opportunity exists, and then what is the nature of the opportunity. So the opportunity exists because we have a cap and trade program in Ontario as of 1st of January 2017. Within that cap and trade program, large industrial emitters are able to use two different types of compliance instruments to comply. One is an allowance provided to them by the Ontario government or auctioned by the Ontario government. The second is an offset credit, which is a greenhouse gas reduction that is achieved outside of the cap and trade sector. And carbon sequestration in forests is one of those opportunities outside of that cap and trade sector, and certainly by far the largest opportunity. So the Ontario government has published offset regulations that set a framework for recognition of these greenhouse gas reductions, and they are developing protocols which are basically the rules that establish what is an eligible project, how do you quantify the emissions reductions, and what safeguards do you put in place to make sure that those reductions are real, quantifiable, permanent, additional, and several other criteria. So there's a great deal of robustness that is put into this, because at the end of the day, you're creating a commodity that has value in the market. So out of the 13 project categories that they are developing protocols for, one of them is referred to as forest management. And the principal reduction or method under forest management is what we refer to as improved forest management. And this is the opportunity that we are evaluating with Bruce County. Improved forest management is a bit of a misnomer. It's not so much about here are all the things you could do as a community to improve your forest. The essence of this is to compensate landowners, such as yourselves, to take a long-term commitment to preserving the CO2 sequestered in your forest that is above the regional average. So if you have been managing your forest sustainably and meet a higher standard than the regional average or common practice, then you'll be recognized for that, and you're making what is effectively a 100-year commitment to preserving that and not causing a reversal of that CO2 that is sequestered in your forest, and in fact, maintaining it, and if possible, growing that over time. That is the nature of this opportunity. And so this graph helps you visualize that, and that regional average is that red line at the bottom. It's what we refer to as a baseline. And if Bruce County, by nature of its high rotation ages, its active management of the forest, its harvesting less than annual growth on a yearly basis, has a higher carbon stocking than that baseline, then you will be credited for those. And that would be that yellow portion that you can see in that graph. And you'd be credited that in year one. And then the sort of green triangles represent the offset credits that would accrue to the forest if you're harvesting less than annual growth every year and you're growing that carbon stock over time. And that really is the opportunity. You would have that opportunity to generate offsets over a 30-year period. Okay, so very importantly, this is not free money. There is a very significant commitment associated with this. And it is under the premise that if, in the absence of this commitment, landowners over a 100-year period are very likely to change the way they manage the forest. They'll be subject to new pressures, sale of land, that will result in that CO2 being released. So what do these commitments look like? It's a bit hard to read here. Sorry, that's the next slide. First of all, in this table, you'll see a voluntary standard. I'm not talking about this a great deal today in the interest of time, but suffice to say there are two opportunities. There's an opportunity under the cap and trade market, and there's also an opportunity for voluntary offsets, in particular due to the Ontario government's own program for procuring voluntary offsets to meet their greenhouse gas reduction targets. But the commitment is to undertake a detailed inventory of your forest every 12 years, to do third-party verifications of that inventory every 6 years, to retain and not cause a reversal of the CO2 that you've been credited for over 100 years. And the 6-year verifications, 12-year inventories will continue throughout that 100-year process. So that clearly is a significant commitment. And that creates it is a contract with the Ontario government to retain the carbon sequestered on that forest, to not cause an intentional reversal. Unintentional reversals caused by fire, pests, are covered by an insurance pool and will not impact the value of of this opportunity. So making a 100-year commitment is a difficult thing for any landowner to do. And it should be clear that this is not a common practice activity. Most landowners will not go for this opportunity. I think we're excited at the prospect for community forests such as yourselves, because it requires a mindset of long-term stewardship of the resource and of building more holistic values related to your forest. And I think community forests are very well placed to take advantage of this opportunity. So what does the opportunity look like? Well, on a lower end of the scale with generating voluntary offsets, we've estimated, given the data provided, and these are initial estimates to be refined, that the opportunity is in the order of just shy of $700,000 over the first 10 years, probably another $200,000 to $300,000 over the subsequent 20 years, to $900,000. And in the case of a compliance offset for the cap and trade market, we believe that's just shy of $500,000 on the low end and around $1.7 million on the high end, with the majority of that value being generated in year one. So it is front-end loaded in terms of, so most landowners that we partner with, we do many of these projects. They are using the revenues to reinvest in their forests and their asset and to offset operational costs. So what we would like to do is help Bruce County further evaluate whether this is something of interest to you, whether that commitment or whether the revenues, I should say, is worth the commitment for you. The way we operate as a business is we partner with landowners, and we will undertake all of the heavy lifting and all the technical work. We will finance all of the very extensive inventories, third-party verification, registration, going through the whole approval process. So this is several $100,000 of cost. And we have contractual relationships with all of the large buyers. We will monetize these offsets on your behalf, and we will share in the net proceeds. And we will recover all of those costs that we put up front through those proceeds, so that if the project is unsuccessful, we bear the risk. Unsuccessful in the sense that it's not approved by the Ministry of Environment. That's a model that aligns our interests with yours, so that we're incentivized to maximize the revenue and to minimize the cost. So what we're doing today is part of our cost of doing business and helping landowners understand, get comfortable with these opportunities and hopefully, where they are attractive, pursue them with us. So I'll leave it there today. There's a lot more behind this. There is more information in the presentation, which I encourage you to take a look at.
Thank you, Jamie. Is any questions for Jamie? Milt?
Thank you, Mr. Church. So if you manage your forest to its potential, which is not what we're doing, right, in Bruce County, we are not doing that. Is there still a benefit to doing that if you're managing it to its potential?
I think it depends on what you would define as potential, but the common practice would be managing a forest to its potential for near-term cash flows. If you're managing your forest to maximize near-term cash flows, this opportunity is not for you. In fact, it will not be available to you. This opportunity will be available to landowners who are meeting a much higher standard of sustainable forest management. Does that?
Maybe I should word it in a different way. So if you were managing your forest so that it would be sustainable, and that's, I mean, for 100 years or whatever, then is it worth the opportunity? Or
Yes. Yes, in fact, the opportunity really exists for those forests that are currently managing it to a high standard of sustainability in the sense of building resiliency of the forest, in increasing rotation ages, in harvesting less than annual growth. It exists precisely under those circumstances.
Yeah, and just to follow up, so if we were managing our forests with lands and forests, is who we have mark our forests, is that sustainable management, or what is that? Would that be? Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
So what we have undertaken assessment. Kevin has provided data. We've looked at forest management plan, and our professional foresters have assessed whether this looks like a viable opportunity for Bruce County. Mm-hmm. And our assessment has been that it indeed does. It right. does look viable precisely because of the forest stewardship that you have undertaken in the past.
Mm-hmm. So just to follow up, so we could continue managing like that and still be worthwhile for Bruce County?
Yes.
Good, thank you.
Any further questions? Ann, go ahead.
So I don't have Milt's knowledge of this, so conservation authorities, do you approach them in the area? Like we've got the Maitland and the Saugeen, and I know they have forests as well. So their sustainability, I remember when I was on Saugeen, like certain years, it wasn't worth selling because of the low prices of lumber, etc. So I would assume that a conservation authority would manage a forest in a sustainable manner. And do you have a lot of them signed up across Ontario or potential there?
So I do believe we have potential. We are within the partnership with Eastern Ontario Model Forest, of whom there are several conservation authorities as members doing the very same assessment. And Grey Sauble would be a good example. South Nation. So we are undertaking this very exercise and helping conservation authorities understand the nature of the opportunity. And we expect that it will be a viable opportunity for many of them. There is a certain scale required for this because there is a lot of cost in doing these very detailed forest inventories. So for the smallest landowners, it is unlikely to be an opportunity in the near term. But for larger counties and conservation authorities, it will be a very interesting opportunity.
Thank you. I think it's well worth exploring.
Any further questions? I have one. I'm just struggling with this 100-year commitment, and like, I mean, how can anybody make a commitment for anything for 100 years, and how it even plays into this? Because is it a, you know, how do you manage that idea to say we're going to do this for 100 years and then we enter into an agreement and the next election comes along and something changes. And so, I mean, how does that affect the program in the long term?
Yeah, it is undoubtedly the biggest challenge for a landowner. That said, we have many landowners who are undertaking these 100-year commitments. I think on the basis of, and they are committing in many cases their future boards and their future children who are inheriting their property. I think it works where you have a long-term view on maintaining your current sustainable forest management practices. In many ways, it's getting credit for what you're already doing and the philosophy of management of your lands that you have. So I think if you're comfortable with that philosophy being maintained over a 100-year period, then this is something that really helps you leverage funds to enhance those activities and to invest in your forest. But yes, you are creating an encumbrance on the future operations, and that's something you will need to be comfortable with, and the revenues, which can be very considerable, will need to compensate you for that.
I think, you know, where you see tangible benefits like revenues for this in the long term, then it's not so hard to make that commitment. But where that starts to vary, then the whole program, I think, gets into question. But I think it's a great idea. I'm just struggling with a 100-year commitment because it's a long time, yeah.
It is.
But I appreciate it.
Was this something you would put on title of land?
So interestingly enough, that is to be determined because Ontario is, we still need to see them publish that protocol. In California, we have a market that's been existing for these opportunities for the last 5 or 6 years. There are roughly 65 million tons of emissions reductions leveraged through this mechanism, over $1 billion US. It is not on title in California. It is still an encumbrance. It is still a contract with the regulator. So I would believe that it would be on title, just from common sense you would believe that it would, but it won't necessarily be the case.
Go ahead, Ann.
I don't have so much trouble with the 100-year commitment, I don't think. So I saw it where I grew up in the Pine River watershed. When the settlers came, it was 95% forest. And when we started the Pine River watershed, it was 5%. So I think and then the money that has to be, like, from the government and fundraising and everything else. And I don't know what it is now, Mitch. Do you know what the percentage is now? But when I left, it had just gone up to like 8% or something, and we planted, you know, in the hundreds of thousands of trees. So it takes a long time to recover, but it was realized the whole watershed was getting into erosion problems. The nutrients were running off the land. There weren't all the things, I won't go into the detail, that was affecting the lake, the near shores of the lake. So I think you have to look over a long period of time, because it just kind of disappears in little chunks, and I think the sustainability of our forests is really important to our area, and I think the county's done a pretty good job, and it's easier at the county level. It's been established. So I'm just thinking the environment is important, but you don't always realize it, because if it just kind of goes in bits and drabs, comparing to the Pine River watershed, where, oh, we'll clear this little chunk of land, we'll clear this, and then you've gone from 95% down to 5%, which isn't enough. Sustainable forest is supposed to be around minimum 15 to 20%. They used to say 30%. Well, that's too high for a agricultural area. I would be happy if in the cash crop lands of Ontario, if we could have 15% instead of 30.
Thank you. No further questions then. Thank you very much, James.
Thank you.
Sure, yep.
Right. Through you, Mr. Chair, do wonder about, given the comments around the circle, that I believe that there is consensus for staff to proceed to go to the next level with the organization, and we will bring a report back to committee. Yeah.
I think we can ask that if nobody has an objection to that. I think it's a great idea. Thanks very much. So then we'll return to our agenda. The next items are action items, and the first one is the Job Creation Partnership Program, and I believe Andrew is going to speak to it. Welcome, Andrew.
Good morning, Mr. Warden and the members of Planning and Development. So I'm here today seeking approval to apply for the Job Creation Partnership Program. The program is funded under the Ministry of Advanced Education and Skill Development. They keep changing the name every year. So if we are successful in getting the grant to employ 3 participants over a 7-month period and to work on trail initiatives in the county. So the project is valued at about $40,000. That would cover the wages and some of the safety equipment for the participants. The idea of the project is to provide valuable skills for unemployed individuals. And quite often we have cases where somebody's worked in a factory for 20 years, and when they come out, they don't have a lot of broad skills. So coming through the program, they get to learn quite a few different skills, things like making decisions, problem solving, and all those different processes through the design and construction of trails. So we've been very successful at it, and hopefully we'll get approval for it this year if you agree to that. So if anybody has any questions, I'd be certainly willing to answer them.
Thanks very much. The recommendation, I'll read it then, it's pretty short. The recommendation is that the staff be authorized to apply for a Job Creation Partnership Program under the Ontario Ministry of Advanced Education and Skills Development to employ 3 workers to assist with trail development efforts on county forest lands, and that the director be authorized to enter in and execute agreements related to the funding proposal should the county be successful. I need a mover and a seconder. Moved by Mitch, seconded by Paul. Any discussion on this item? All in favor? Vote. That's carried.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, sorry. So the next item on the agenda again is an action item, and it's a local training action team letter to the school boards, and it is attached, and Susan is going to present.
Good morning. Going to give you just a little bit of background about this letter and where it has come from. So as you know, in 2016, the Bruce County and Bruce Power launched the Nuclear Economic Development and Innovation Initiative, jointly funded partnership that includes engagement across Bruce, Grey, and Huron counties. And as part of this initiative, we struck a local training action team. This team was established under the leadership of the advisory committee to take actions to encourage local economic development and ensure that business across all sectors continue to have a favorable impact from the regional economy. This group came together and we looked at developing a letter which we're recommending to be signed and forwarded to the Blue Water District School Board, and to raise awareness about what the local training action team has been doing, and to encourage the school board to take an active role along with the strategic partners as we go forward with these initiatives. The letter has been reviewed by all members on the local training action team committee and has undergone several revisions as we've looked at it, and the final version is attached for your consideration. The letter goes over specific goals. It is a combination of information to the school boards, but also a request for moving forward on some action items. And to just give you a quick overview of those, goal number 1, to help Bruce, Grey, and Huron residents benefit from economic upswing, and to do this, encourage interest in skilled trades. For local residents, support innovation centers and makerspace programs. The action items we're requesting would be to work collaboratively to build pathways and to develop a communication plan, including but not limited to skilled trades, brochures, videos, etc. establish a first look hiring process that requires employers who receive government contracts to consider qualified workers from local employment and training programs. Goal number 2, to improve local training opportunities, expand access to skilled trades and other relevant training, work with local colleges and trainers to provide identified training needs. And the action items there would be to increase local training delivery agency offerings to support apparent opportunities and to pool training to support local skills development. Goal number 3 would be to encourage more local employers to participate in experiential learning opportunities for students. This perhaps is where we start to speak to more of what the school boards are going to have a keener interest in. Offer co-op placements, job shadow opportunities, reach ahead activities, support specialist high skills major programs with business and industry leadership and volunteers, and in-kind and financial support and/or sponsorship where appropriate. The action items would be including a plan to engage parents to support experiential learning. And we know that our strongest way to get to our kids is to get to the parents. Build employer workplace tasks into the curriculum, like a robotic club. Engage grades 7 and 8 into STEAM activity. You've probably heard the acronym STEM for a number of years, and we've added in arts into that. So now we're seeing STEAM become the more popular acronym lately. And use online tools included, but not limited to, exploring Edge Factor, speakers bureaus, evening and weekend training sessions at local schools for the general public, and unions may use equipment as well. Goal number 4, to develop clear career path messages for local opportunities. Support a broader training network to coordinate innovation centers, co-ops, union training facilities, and local community colleges. Promote clear pathways to employment in the nuclear industry, including local training pathways. And action items would be to build a mobile skills development network, innovation center, makerspace, sharing technology. Bit of a long mouthful. Equipment in other locations, potentially partnering with schools, libraries, colleges, and community spaces and unions, and create a communication plan by utilizing videos and social media to showcase success stories and companies, and work with human resource departments. So there's the 4 goals that have been identified, and then some action items that we have as recommendations. And the consideration with developing this letter was really to provide this out to the school boards, give them a sense of where we're working collectively and collaboratively, and where they may be able to also provide support as we go forward.
Thank you very much, Susan. There's a recommendation here, and I think what it's missing a reference to the 2 other school boards, so we'll add those if that's fine. Okay, thanks, Mitch. So I'll read the recommendation is that the letter drafted by the Fort County Labor Market Planning Board on behalf of the local training action team to provide update to the 3 local school boards and seek board participation in a supportive collaboration on action items be approved and signed by the warden. Is there discussion on this? If not, then all in favor. Thank you very much. Thank you, Susan. Oh, sorry. I needed a mover and second for that one. Moved by Ann, seconded by Milt. Mitch, sorry. So I would choose for more reasons than one. All in favor? That's carried. So that's the end of our action items. The next item, there's, I guess, 5 information items. The first one is the Bruce Economic Developers Council on Ontario Awards of Excellence, and Kara is going to present.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. This is a great report to present to committee today. The Economic Development Council of Ontario is sort of our coordinating body for economic development in the province, and annually they hold their Awards of Excellence. They held that last week, February 7th, down in Toronto. There's 4 categories that they look at for awards of excellence, and they're listed there: promotional items, collaboration and partnerships, planning and building initiatives, and individual leadership. And we're very excited to announce today that Bruce County took home 2 awards in the categories of planning and building initiatives. We won the award for our Find Yourself in Bruce County strategic plan, which particularly I'm proud of that one. And in the promotional category, we won the award for our Business to Bruce Design and Communication Style Guide. So it was a very exciting time for Bruce County to win those 2 awards. We're often up against major players in the field, so it was nice to have Bruce County recognized and see that our efforts are gaining traction on the ground. So if you'll indulge us, we do have a press release to go out today with regards to this, and we're hoping that the warden would be available for a photo as well this morning.
Thanks very much, Karen. First of all, congratulations on all the work. It's nice to see us get recognized for the work, because I know we've put a tremendous amount of work in economic development in the last couple of years. So, any comments?
Yeah, I too want to congratulate. Actually, we're going to have to use some of that wood from our sustainable forest to build a big trophy case. So, no, that's awesome. And Bruce County is definitely on the map right now. So, congratulations to all involved.
Yeah, okay, I think they're going to take a picture now, Paul. So, very good. So then the next information that is an agricultural business retention and expansion project, and I believe Nicole is going to present this.
Good morning, everybody. So it's a very brief report this morning, but what I thought I would do is just walk you through where we are and the work that we've been doing in partnership with Grey and Simcoe counties, just to give you an overview of our agricultural BR&E. So as I mentioned, the counties of Simcoe and Grey, as well as the city of Barrie, Orillia, Georgian College, Nottawasaga Futures Community Development Corporation, and South Georgian Bay Small Business Enterprise Center, all of that was a little mouthful, so bear with me, have collectively been operating as an ad hoc group known as Foodie since 2014, and they've had some incredible success in partnership events and some food entrepreneur programming in that time. They came together last year, and we came on board a little bit later with a view to carrying out a business retention and expansion project for the region. So we've broken that project down into 4 phases, and I'm pleased to say that today represents the last piece of phase 1, which is the project scoping, approach, planning, and funding model. The deliverables from this phase were the partnership model, which I've just reiterated, the scope of work, which resulted in the appointment by Simcoe County of a consultant to do some of the analysis work, a project schedule, and the building of support from all of you, which is why I'm here today. Our next phase, phase 2, is really the research piece, and the findings from that will be a findings report, which will carry out an introductory summary of the detailed research that we're going to undertake, key observations, and identification of any service and infrastructure gaps. The key piece in phase 2 is that really what we're looking for here is partnership from all of our municipalities and our local leaders to help us carry out the business retention and expansion surveys. So I'll come back to that a little bit more after I give you the summary, but just to sort of lay it out now. Our phase 3 piece then obviously will be to develop a strategy to grow the agriculture sector in the county. Simcoe and Grey will do the same pieces. And then our final phase 4 will be that implementation piece. In terms of financial staffing and legal considerations, Simcoe and Grey and the various other partners had come together before we engaged this past December. So they had a budget of $25,000, which included RED funding, and we're proposing to add another $5,000 to that pot. In terms of the milestone pieces, just to give you a sense of the progress that we've made and where we're going, after today's report, media releases will be issued by by Gray and Simcoe, and we'll look at doing some for Bruce County as well, just to let our agricultural stakeholders know what's happening in the research side of things. And then we'll engage with the consultant late February to look at proportional representation by NAICS code. And really what that means is we just want to ensure that the agriculture and food sector is totally represented and that it's not disproportionately so for, say, cash crops versus retail, for example. Our next steps then will be to engage with each of our municipalities to carry out volunteer training and then to do a Grey Bruce launch event, followed by some workshops internally where we'll continue to spread the word. And then you can look forward to interviews with our primary producers in March and April, and interviews with the agricultural food chain in May through August. So we've allowed for the planting timelines in there, so that's why there's the distinction made, just so that we're meeting our stakeholders in a way that's convenient for them. We can expect a draft report from our consultant in September and a final trends report in October. Whistle-stop tour. And I do apologize because even though I try to slow down, I know it's quick. So any questions?
Any questions? Ann?
Just a term, value proposition. I was just curious as to what that was for one thing.
Effectively, it answers the question, why do business here over anywhere else? So it's the unique selling point, for lack of a better description.
So, and I was just curious, if Gray and Simcoe, I'm always about not duplicating things, I assume they've got a RED grant and everything, so they've tapped all the knowledge of OMAFRA and the University of Guelph.
We've been working with OMAFRA, not the University of Guelph, though we have had Georgian College involvement so far. As a group since December, we've been looking at the questions that we use for the business retention and expansion study. So typically there's sort of an OMAFRA standard, and then there are a number of different surveys available by industry. So we've had engagement with OMAFRA to sort of come up with a hybrid of all of those so that we can look at both the agricultural sector, but also that wider value chain. So the short answer is yes, they've been involved. We have, since December, been involved as well. And I think we're certainly not duplicating efforts, but we're working to come up with sort of a hybrid solution that works for the whole region.
Right. So I learned like just what an immense wealth of information OMAFRA and the University of Guelph have. You know, like they have 3D projections of every watershed and the crops on it each year, and incomes, and the farm organizations also have a lot of data. So I was just wondering, are you tapping the knowledge, say, of the grain growers of Ontario and
So
all the different farm
we will be
organizations for their data?
So we're working with the Ontario Federation of Agriculture, so they tend to look closer at the value side of things. Really what we'll do through the interview process is connect with organizations and with individual farmers to get their, farmers and producers, to get their input on what could we be doing better. So we'll take the existing data and try and supplement it, is the short answer. But yeah, we're not creating anything that's already there.
So just from my husband's involvement in like the grain growers and the other organizations, it's not just the Federation of Agriculture, they have really good information specific to their organization and data, and so it's very, I think it's very worthwhile to include them in your net.
Agreed. We'll be hoping to do between 80 and 100 interviews with individuals as part of this process, leveraging our municipal contacts to sort of engage with their municipality. But definitely as part of that, we want to reach out to the representative groups across the board. So we're working with Gray for sort of an engagement insofar as that we're not duplicating again, because some of those organizations are Grey Bruce. But yeah, we'll be doing a list of key targets to speak to, if you will.
Yes. Well, it's the provincial organizations that the local organizations belong to that tend to have the greater resources. And they can get them for you probably, but it's amazing what they have.
Yeah, we're tapped in with OMAFRA, so I would be hopeful that we've got a pretty good sense of what's out there, and we're making sure that we've got a full picture when we come back to do the findings report.
Okay, thanks.
Any further questions or comments? If not, thanks very much. So the next item is the Business to Bruce, South Bruce Strategy and Toolkit, and I believe Susan is going to present again.
So today I'm going to give you a little bit of an overview. We come at the end of the year and give you an annual report and give you all these updates. And so we thought we would start to bring you some of the work as it's unfolding so that you're aware. So the South, and with the Business to Bruce program, we have been working with our communities, and we say we onboard them, but our work with our communities individually ends up resulting in a strategy and toolkit. And so we have finished the one for South Bruce, and we want to give you an overview this morning. So as you know, within the context of our macro approach to economic development, the Business to Bruce program has been designed to harness the latent leadership potential of our county's communities and address support and resources to harness that potential. So we, as you know, and I won't go over this too much because you're very familiar with our macro approach where the county will cast a wide net, position the region, build capacity, and create awareness at a broader level and facilitate and filter opportunities. And we are playing a leadership capacity in that role and administering the overall strategy and collaborating with our community partners. Each municipality is responsible for ensuring that its community is ready for business, selling its community's business brand, managing recruitment tools, and supporting local leaders. And the local leaders need to work to foster a strong business culture with ambassadors on the ground, nurturing and guiding new and current business opportunities. So it's a bit of a challenging thing when you all go out to put it together and try to work and bring consultants in to work with communities, work with the business community, and come up with those new strategies. So the Business to Bruce program in 2017 has been working with South Bruce, Walkerton, Port Elgin, Southampton, and Huron-Kinloss. How does the program work? In developing the strategy, it is not something that the county comes forward and develops a strategy and hands it down. It's not top-down. The Business to Bruce program is a collaborative exercise undertaken with local community business owners and community leaders, as well as municipal staff, to explore the community's strengths, assets, and potential. It reviews past reports, studies, looks at emerging trends, case studies, and best practices. And best practices are undertaken and blended with in-person consultations and community meetings, and the overall process results in a recommended strategy for the community to pursue as it positions itself within the larger region and province. And it really is about that positioning, and every community has a unique flavor, personality, and opportunities, and it's trying to find what that can be for each that gives them a unique position. Once a strategy is agreed upon by all, then marketing collateral and short-term and long-term action plan is designed, and a full toolkit is provided to the community for implementation. The toolkits support strategy execution and implementation. Each community has a unique strategy and position, and likewise, different marketing tactics, tools, and recommended actions. Fully developed marketing collateral is provided in the toolkits, ready to print, post, or publish when the community is ready to do so. Each community is able to utilize print-ready templates and customize their use. They're given the vector files, they're given the original files so they can change names, update business profiles, drop in a new image. Short and long-term action plans are provided to the community to help guide the execution of the strategy. For South Bruce, that strategy and positioning will be Ontario's cooperative community. The Business to Bruce strategy for South Bruce is focused on positioning the municipality as Ontario's cooperative community in the context of business models, municipal services delivery and partnership, succession planning, local expertise, and lifestyle. By developing ideas, communication, executing tactics, and living that position, South Bruce will attract the attention of like-minded people. The South Bruce strategy was approved by the South Bruce Council before the end of 2017, and the toolkit and work plan have been completed. Now they're ready for execution and implementation. The Bruce County Economic Development will work collaboratively with South Bruce as it moves forward with the execution of its strategy. So it really is to give you a sense of how this program is developing. When you see these toolkits, you will see a commonality in the look of some of these positioning, with that sort of triangle across. It is that Bruce brand that's on it, but the individual components within it are unique to each community. And because the strategy and the positioning for each community is unique to them, how they will execute will be slightly different with each. It won't be exactly the same. It wouldn't be, we wouldn't want it to be. And then as we go forward, it is really meant to be an empowering opportunity for the communities to be able to do things that they can work on, and collaboratively with the county, there are things that we can work on. And I think the last thing I would sort of add in closing is that as we move forward with each of our communities, we will really be looking at how our programs and services can support them as they go down this path. And for instance, if with our Business to Bruce program, if we are hosting a workshop, we can tailor that workshop to really support different communities and bring those to those communities and work in partnership with them, collaboratively host those. We have a women's event coming up on March the 7th, and we're hosting it in Huron-Kinloss. We're going to host a workshop on the afternoon before that day, and it will be in support of where their strategy is moving. So it's just to give you an idea of how that rolls together.
Thank you, Susan. Any questions? Bob, Robert?
I'd just like to make a comment. We used to have two Chamber of Commerce, and they kind of dissolved and we went to one, a business association, South Bruce Business Association, and they are really active, and I really appreciate the county working with them, because whatever we benefit out of it in South Bruce, our surrounding municipalities also benefit out of it with economic growth. And there's a lot of things that are happening within South Bruce. Yeah. And I really appreciate the county working with us to fulfill the obligation that we have, which is economic development.
Thank you, Bob. Any further questions or comments? If not, thanks very much, Susan.
Thank you.
So the next item on the agenda then is Project Innovate Update, and I believe Nicole is going to present again.
Hello again. So since the report to committee in November of 2017, which outlined the 4 phases of Project Innovate, define, discover, deliver, and deploy, considerable progress has been made advancing the timeline and revising the planned funding model. So what I wanted to do now is just give you another whistle-stop tour of where we are and what our next steps are. In terms of a brief summary, Phase 1's been completed. The securing of funding was not required. We had planned to look for do a RED application for some funding, but as a result of some pro bono Deloitte work, we didn't have to do that, so that's a great news story. The preliminary planning and project scoping has been completed, resulting in that pro bono partnership with Deloitte, as I mentioned. Phase 2 has kicked off, and that's comprised of research and stakeholder consultation, as well as analysis. We were in contact with our municipal CAOs in January to set up fact-finding interviews with Deloitte, which have now been carried out. Our next step is a strategic workshop, which will be held March 2nd. The workshop will engage participants in a discussion on the current state of the existing industrial framework that we have, and an exploration as to how best to address any gaps and support an innovative ecosystem for the future. That's really, I suppose, in a nutshell, where we've been and where we're going. So as Susan mentioned, we want to continue to come to you and give you updates as they're happening, as distinct to waiting until the end of the year and giving you a ton of information. So that's it.
Thank you, Nicole. Any questions? If not, thank you very much. And the next, the final or information item is an update on Ontario Network Entrepreneurs Program 1, and again, Susan is going to present.
Back again. So this one is for information, and just to give you a summary of a report that has just come out in the past month or so. And it's really a report that the provincial government in the 2015-2016 budget undertook and put forward. So this is a review of the ONE network, and the ONE is the Ontario Network of Entrepreneurs. That's what ONE stands for. A lot of parts of ONE, you will have heard of the Mars Innovation Centre in Toronto. You may have heard of Invest Ottawa, Ontario Centres of Excellence, regional innovation centres like Communitech, and small business enterprise centres, of which we have a contract with the provincial government. So the provincial government lumps all of that under the acronym ONE. And so the provincial government wished to have a review taken of the entire network, how it was doing, give an analysis of its effectiveness and its impact. And this is a summary of that report. To give you a bit of background on the ONE network because we're part of it, and in Bruce County, we began operating this Small Business Enterprise Centre. It's the acronym that the ONE network uses for the contract that we have. We call it Business to Bruce, but they call it Small Business Enterprise Centre in Port Elgin in the fall of 2016. The Small Business Enterprise Program is a provincial program funded as part of the ONE network. And it includes support for startup programs, highly impactful ones like Starter Company and Plus and this Summer Company program. Funding contribution agreement with the county provides support for 2 staff members in Port Elgin, operational assistance, and then program funding for both Starter Company Plus and the Summer Company program. The ONE network, as I was giving you a bit of background on it, had developed this full strategy review for the programs and services that were provided and has a comprehensive report that has come out for this. The report is called Building Global Winners, an expert review panel on the Ontario Network of Entrepreneurs. The report includes a series of recommendations for the provincial government to consider, and these are currently under review. And we don't know whether these will be implemented. It's just to give you a bit of Cole's notes and look at where they're thinking about moving towards and where the central direction and themes are coming out. The central themes in the report are urging the provincial government to have a focus on going global, on global competitiveness, and innovation. The report assesses what is working well, what problems exist, and recommendations for a path forward. The panel traveled across the province doing consultations, assessing survey results, and utilized another review that Deloitte had provided in July of 2017, because Deloitte does an annual program review. Questions the panel asked and focused on: does the ONE program need to make adjustments? Is it adequately focused on identifying and helping companies most likely to succeed? Does it deliver the right services and programs for entrepreneurs with global ambitions? As we face the next wave of disruption from technologies like artificial intelligence, is a system that was designed for the needs of a previous technological age ready to meet the transformational challenges of the coming one? The panel's overall findings were that ONE program needs improvements to be ready for the next era, and that the current system in place is unwieldy, and that the ONE program needs a philosophical shift to meet the challenges. And really, that's what we want to just give an update about. So what the recommendations come forward with is to infuse the innovation network with a greater emphasis on global ethos and focus. The strategic goal would be to go global. The greater international reach needs to be undertaken by creating new programs that connect entrepreneurs with global knowledge and markets from the earliest stages of their development. Increased government spending, that would be a positive. Ensure firms can get the expertise from the best mentors and business leaders. Improve the assessment mechanism of new and existing programs, as well as clients. And be willing to let go of programs that are not meeting expectations. The ONE brand the recommendation is to rename it as Innovation Ontario. So we'll see where that goes, whether we get a name change or not. And the regional innovation centers should be grouped into 3 categories based on roles and responsibilities. And it would go from a local innovation centers with a focus on local economic development to support innovative technology innovation and technology companies, not yet ready to scale, and to collaborate with other local organizations such as small business enterprise centers to support improved adoption of technology amongst local businesses. Regional innovation centers, which would be specialized, they're looking at recommending that the existing regional innovation centers become specialized instead of all being generalists, and that provincial innovation centers be identified, and though it would be 3, it would be Mars, Communitech, and Invest Ottawa. So these are all just recommendations. Who knows whether they'll be implemented, but it's interesting to see where all the recommendations have a common flow, and the Deloitte review that was done in 2017 also brought up some of these themes as well. So there seems to be a recurring theme coming forward in a lot of these reports. So items of note, the small business enterprise centers are part of the One Network. They weren't really highlighted in this report. They were mentioned at the beginning and mentioned at the end, and they were really referenced as local grassroots organizations, which is good because they're seeing them in that light. But it is looking at maybe developing a system that may be standing beside it. We'll have to wait and see. The report does include them as a basic element at the local level. The focus of all recommendations is on improving global reach and adoption of technology. There is a recommendation to develop local innovation centers. That is something of interest for us as we go forward. If there is an opportunity for innovation centers, then we would be well positioned within where the direction may be coming with the provincial government. And so it really was just to give you a little bit of an information about the report, provide the report to you, and just sort of give you a highlight on where some of the things of note and of interest.
Thank you. Comments? Robert?
This organization, every once in a while you see on television where Premier Catherine Wynne and certain business owners go over to other countries to promote
Trade missions.
sales in. So is this, how does this tie in with the province of Ontario, with Catherine, with these trade missions?
Yep. It's an opportunity that we always have the capacity to explore because really that happens on a regular basis, and it happens with every government almost every year, not necessarily every year, but they will look at working with the different ministries within the provincial government to identify companies who have good potential to go. And so those are usually identified both through the county working with OMAFRA representative, Ministry of Growth representatives to identify companies that could play that role. And some of those larger companies already play that role and have a very strong relationship directly with different provincial ministries.
Any further comments? I think when I read this, I thought some of the work that we've done through our economic development, it almost parallels it. I suspect there was some cooperation there, but it does really reflect what we're doing in Bruce County here, and this is just on a bigger scale on the province, so I think we're on the right path here.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's just so that you have some awareness of, where the report is and where the directions are, and I think we're well aligned with it.
Yeah, I do too. Thanks very much, Susan. So that is the agenda. The next item on the agenda is a closed meeting, and it's moved by Mitch, second by Milt, that the committee move into closed meeting to discuss Ontario Municipal Board appeals pursuant to Section 239(2)E of the Municipal Act 2001 relating to litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board. All in favor? Okay, so we're back in open session, and again, welcome our online viewers, and I'd like, the report from the closed session that committee has given staff direction on the two items that were two appeals that were in the matters before the board. I think is that sufficient, Kelly? So then I guess we'll take a motion to adjourn. Ann and Janice, all in favor? We're adjourned.